Hi, Misha here. Hope everyone had a good holiday. Recording this one at the tail end, so if I seem a little tired, I apologize, but I did feel like getting a couple of videos done before calling it a night. This is one I've kind of talked about doing. This is the Russian Sukhoi SU-30. Now there's lots of variations and models in the SU-30 line. This one is Russian, as you can probably tell. But essentially, this is a two-seat version of this craft over here, the SU-27B from Sukhoi. The 27 was designed primarily as an air-superiority fighter to take on fourth-generation jets. Very big, very powerful. But a single seat, primarily air-to-air, especially when it was first used in the 1980s. The SU-30 is a little different. Now this model here is from JC Wings, and this is from Hobbymaster. Both are 1/7/2 scale diecast, and a couple have asked me about which is better, so since they're very similar, I thought I would talk a bit about it and go over a little bit of the history. The SU-30 started off pretty much right after the Russian military started flying the SU-27. It had a rather protracted developmental program. It first flew in 1977, but did not enter into service until 1985, and really wasn't seen in large numbers till 1990. But the Soviet Air Defense Force saw a need for a long-range, high-endurance interceptor aircraft. So it was pretty quickly settled on to go with the SU-27UB, which was originally the two-seat training version of the 27. They went with this for a few reasons. It was a tried and tested design. Also, the 27UB was fighter capable. It wasn't, strictly speaking, only limited to being a trainer. And it had the size to give it the additional fuel capacity for range. So really, this began all in 1986, and then a proof of concept flew in 1987. It started off known as the SU-27PU, and then the original prototype would fly on December 31st, 1989, obviously 1990 essentially. But then, of course, political and all that would happen in Russia, setting the program back a bit. The first pre-production SU-30 flew in 1992, with the first production models appearing a couple of years later, and the first ones entering Soviet, later Russian, I should say, service by 1996, and this model is an early example. But yeah, it is just a 27 two-seater, has the same overall length of 72 feet, same wingspan of just over 48 feet. It's a little bit slower. It's Mach 2 capable, whereas the 27 can do 2.2 or even higher. 2 engines. Has a slightly lower maximum ceiling of about 56,000 feet versus the around 60,000 for the 27. It still has a 30 millimeter cannon with 150 rounds and 10 to 12 hardpoints depending on which variant. But it does have several differences as well. Of course, we have our second seater. When this was a trainer, of course, he was there doing trainer things. But in the interceptor role, he's there operating the radar. Basically, whereas the original was this air superiority, this was classified as a multi-role fighter. And as its development progressed, that became more and more. Yes, it has air-to-air capability, but it also has air-to-surface, air-to-ground, or air-to-ship, anti-shipping capability. Very powerful radar. Of course, it's fly-by-wire. It has triple redundancies for most of the systems. All the newfangled stuff. They would also start to pioneer a lot of thrust vectoring with some variants of the SU-30. It had much longer range, more endurance than the 27. It could fly 4.5 hours on its own fuel, or over 10 hours with aerial refueling, which it was capable of, which not all 27s were. Of course, it was meant to operate from ground, not sea. And it can use pretty much all the modern missiles and bombs in the Russian arsenal. Interestingly, there are two major production variants of this. One is kind of based on the SU-35, kind of a two-seat variant of that. But the one we're interested in is based on the 27UB from the Irkutsk Corporation, because they're the ones who made the original SU-30 MKI and the newer SU-30 SM and the latest SU-30 SM1. India was an early partner with Russia by 1999, but these have had pretty good success, including with China, Vietnam, Venezuela. Quite a long list of customers, because it is a very well-rounded, and it has that blend of new technology and tried and tested, and it's not just super expensive, and it's very versatile, very configurable. Well, after kind of a slow start, as we've seen with Russian stuff, by 2012, the newest version at the time, the SU-30 SM, flew, and the Russian government ordered 60. This order would be fulfilled by 2016, and then a secondary order for 28 would be placed, with that fulfilled in 2018. These would first be deployed in combat in 2015 in Syria. They would be given the primary role of bomber escort and laser target designating, and they had the secondary role of ground attack, kind of hunting, killing, target of opportunity. And usually you would divide the labor. One of the crew would focus more on what was going on in the air, and the other crew would focus on what was going on the ground. And it's always good to have two eyes and brains in a cockpit if you can afford it. It's that extra redundancy that the plane is kind of based on. And just this year, or depending on when you watch this, last year, the government signed a contract with Sukhoi to update much of its fleet to the newest SU-30 SM1 standard. And really all we're doing with these is we're giving more compatibility with newest weapon systems, updating the avionics, the computers, fixing minor things. Even though this is a multi-role fighter, it is still a fighter and a very capable one. I mean, it's based on the SU-27, which is already a very capable aircraft. And for what it does, this performs very well as an interceptor, long range and very lethal, and still quite advanced despite its origins in the 1980s. And really, while Sukhoi has a huge lineup of products, the only ones that have been put into production for the Russian military are, of course, the original 27, the 30, the 33 to a lesser extent, and the 34 and the 35 today. The SU-57's future is still a little uncertain, let's say. But yeah, I've done other videos on Sukhoi, so I figured, why not do one on this guy? What about comparing the Hobbymaster model to the JC wings real quick? They're actually very similar. Both mostly metal, very heavy. Both have opening canopies with removable pilot figures. Both have gear up or down. Both have removable ordnance. Both come with a stand. Sometimes the JC wing stands can be a little janky, but actually this is one of the better ones. I just didn't have it on here because I was afraid of being tired I might knock it over, but it actually fits on its stand, and the stand, because it is metal. However, you have to buy these separately. They're not expensive, about $8. And they're actually bolted together with screws, which is nice, and they can be configured. Whereas the Hobbymaster stand does come with the plane, and this one's not bad because it's kind of the wide base, but not all of theirs are. And this is actually a metal one too, but not all of them are. So this is one of the better Hobbymaster stands, and it actually slots in. The only problem, if you put this on the stand, you can't put the rear missile in the tunnel, whereas with the JC wings you can. The JC wings has a few features that the Hobbymaster does not. For one, you can display it with the aerial refueling in or out. You can also lift the air brake. It's hinged, and the flaps in the back are hinged, which is kind of a mixed blessing. They are a little loose on all the JC wings. On the other hand, they are metal, so it's probably a little more fragile than the Hobbymaster there, but also a little more configurable. I have had some JC wings that feel a little chintzy, and the ordnance doesn't peg on or stay on that well, but this is kind of, I think it's one of their newer models because the ordnance pegs on very nicely. It goes in easy enough and stays on. I've also had them where they usually don't come with the pitot tube installed, and sometimes they fit very loose. But this one fit quite tight. I had to actually kind of line it up and then kind of press it in, and it kind of made like a pop and went in. So I think the tip was a little oversized intentionally so when it went in it wouldn't come out, and they actually gave a spare pitot tube, I guess, in case you lost it or something, so that's kind of nice of them. The Hobbymasters just come with the tube pre-installed, like most of them do. And honestly, they're about the same price when you factor in buying the stand for the JC wings. I still would probably recommend the Hobby Master more. Now, they don't do an SU-30 Russian as far as I'm aware. Not yet anyway. But I would say for JC Wings, this one has actually impressed me. So, if you want a two-seater, this one's probably a perfectly good option. I picked it up because it was on sale a little while back, and I didn't have an SU-27 for my fleet, so why not? But yeah, if you have any questions or comments, please do post them below. And if you could, like, share, and subscribe. This is Misha, and I'll catch you very soon next time.